Hi everybody, Russell Brown, Director of Communications with Forsyth County Government, joined now by David McKee. He's the county manager here for Forsyth County. And we're at the proposed future site of the gathering at South Forsyth. It's a little development you might have heard about here over the past year or so in Forsyth County and might be hearing a lot more about here in the future. David, first of all, thank you so much for coming out here. Very exciting. We've got some action going on here behind us we'll talk about in a few minutes, but a lot happening with this project already.
Yeah, Russell, thanks for having me, and glad to be here to talk to you a little bit and talk to the Forsyth County citizens a little bit about the gathering at South Forsyth and what's happening now, what could happen in the future. So it's exciting to be here. Thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. We have a lot to unpack here with this video today. We're going to kind of go inside what's happened to this point with this project and this proposed development, the county's bond, how that's been structured and how that could be paid back and how that might impact the election later this year. And then also we'll talk about how the county is preparing for infrastructure in this area today, getting ready for what could come tomorrow here with this development. First of all, David, let's start from the very beginning. For those that maybe probably been living under a rock in Forsyth County if you haven't heard about this development, but what is the gathering at South Forsyth?
Yeah, it's not just here in Forsyth County, but really the state of Georgia as a whole. The gathering at South Forsyth is 100 acres, just a little bit over 100 acre, mixed use economic development project that is centered by a professional arena that is desired to be anchored by the developer, by an NHL hockey team. There is obviously there's multifamily, there's retail, but this gives us an opportunity to really put Forsyth County on the map for those corporate headquarters and bring those jobs to Forsyth County right here, right adjacent to State Route 400 at this project. So essentially that's what it is in summary.
And the economic impact of a development of this size with a professional sports franchise, with the shopping, retail, dining in this area that could be similar to what the Cobb County has with the Battery and the Atlanta Braves and Major League Baseball, the economic impact has got to be tremendous, not just in Forsyth County, but you mentioned it there, in the state as a whole. So again, this is a very large, very impactful regional proposed development. Now, a lot has to happen between now and this project coming to fruition. So David, let's talk about where we've gotten to this point for this project to come to life, because there still needs to be some hurdles cleared and some things have to happen on both the county's end as well as the developers.
Yeah, a lot still has to happen. A lot has already happened. Russell, we talked a little bit, and let's make sure we address the infrastructure and what that looks like as well. Briefly, what has happened really over the past, what I'm going to say is 18 months, year and a half, we have worked with Mr. Kraus and his development team in getting us to the point where our Forsyth County Board of Commissioners has approved a memorandum of understanding that amongst other things, bonds $225 million worth of a bond. The Development Authority has also approved an inducement resolution to do that bond. Why the Development Authority? Because they are the bonding arm of the county when it comes to large-scale economic development projects like this. The third thing is the Forsyth County School Board of Education has approved a resolution of support for the gathering team too. Why the Board of Education? Because the area that is going to be the gathering, all of the taxes that will be generated from this zone or this district, if you will, total of 100.3 acres. You'll know in a few minutes when we start talking about redevelopment powers why that 100.3 is important. But the total area of this, the ad valorem taxes that will be generated by the development that the private developer is going to invest in, is what will pay back that $225 million bond. From an economic impact, it has huge upside, much like what we saw in Cobb County. You referenced the Battery, and we have learned a lot from our colleagues over in Cobb County. For example, the ticket fee. That's in our MOU, and there's several other things in there, but we get a per ticket fee that stays right here in Forsyth County until debt service is paid off. We're paying that back to debt service. Other things that are exciting about this project is working with our school board. We've got sort of a three-legged stool in the ability to have housing at a reduced rate in that multifamily component for our sheriff's deputies, for our fire department, And what's new to this particular development is our teachers. I know our Board of Education is struggling to have housing for teachers that are just coming out of college.
Right.
So that component is in here at a reduced rate of rent. So there's a lot that has got us up to this point. So moving forward from there, and I think your next question was, what next?
Yeah.
So what are we doing next? What do we wait to go on next? So I guess first and foremost, what you see out here right now is not directly related to the gathering development. What you see back here is a contractor for Georgia Department of Transportation for the overpass that they're building at McGinnis Ferry. The fill material comes straight off of this site right here. So the direct relation to that is when the gathering team gets approval to move forward, the site, at least what you see behind us, will vastly be graded, will vastly be put on site. So when you're traveling down State Route 400 and you see development going on, that's what you see behind us. Right now it's directly associated with that interchange at McGinnis Ferry, the new exit, new interchange at McGinnis Ferry, but we'll put this site on grade, at least where it is on this point. So then taking the next step, what happens moving forward? What's the next step? How does the project move forward? Pretty simple, Russell. The Mr. Krause and his team have to secure an NHL franchise before the Forsyth County bond money goes into the project. That's it. We're waiting on his word, and essentially he's working with the NHL in moving this project forward.
And then one of the questions that we've received a lot from our media partners, from people in the community as well, is when is that going to happen? When is the NHL going to award a franchise? Will they award a franchise? And that answer is, we don't know, right?
Yeah, I can't answer that, Russell. That's a great question. And what I want the public and the citizens to know, that I have the same questions. We have some safeguards in the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between Forsyth County and the development team that puts it in place that if that never happens, then the bond never goes to the developer.
Right. So there's still a lot that has to happen for this project to move forward, including the bond going into effect, which is contingent completely upon the NHL awarding a franchise to the developer. Now, David, let's talk a little bit hypothetical now. Should that happen, you mentioned it earlier, Redevelopment Powers, paying back that bond, that's something the voters are going to have a say in on November 5th, and earlier than that during advanced voting, which begins in October. One ballot item that's going to be on there is, can the Board of Commissioners and can the county create a tax allocation district via the Redevelopment Powers here for this? Now, there's a lot of lingo in that. There's a lot of governmentese in that when we talk about tax allocation district, also known as a TAD, Redevelopment Powers. You touched on that briefly. Essentially what that means, correct me if I'm wrong, is that would allow for the county to establish a district just on the 100 acres, just on what you see here, just within the boundary of the gathering at South Forsyth development, that would take all those ad valorem taxes and put those towards repaying the bond and towards some of the other services required for this. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, that's a fair statement, and I'll unpack that just a little bit. So first, NHL franchise has to be awarded to the gatherings team. That's number one. Number two, if that happens, then the development authority will issue the bonds. There are two different mechanisms when the way those bonds can be issued. One is through the redevelopment powers and the tools that we have to facilitate the economic growth that we were just talking about. The other is much like what is a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. It's however, what's on the ballot in November is a difficult concept. However, you just summarized it pretty good in that the tool that we're asking the citizens to vote on in that November referendum is just that. It is a TAD. What is a TAD? You'll hear it referenced as a TAD. There's acronyms for everything in the government, right? Yeah. But it's a tax allocation district. So what we are doing is drawing a boundary around this property that we're on right here today. Earlier, you and I were discussing a little bit earlier about 100.3 acres. That ballot language will say 100.3 acres for the gathering at South Forsyth. So that's why that 100.3 is important. So we'll draw a boundary around this area. The taxes that are collected, the economic impact that is driving
this area will fund this area. Why is that important? Because residents in North Forsyth don't have to pay for the debt service of what the 20-year bond will be. Ernst & Young, we contracted with Ernst & Young, an international company, to do an economic impact analysis. And I think it's important for residents to know that it's not just the debt service of the bond that the county had assessed in this. It's also the addition of the fire station. It's the addition of the sheriff's office. Russell, we talked a little bit about infrastructure and what will help offset that infrastructure. So I don't know if we want to take a moment to address a little bit of that, because it's more than just the county doing the infrastructure improvements.
It is, and we talked about this when we first spoke here at this site last year, maybe even 2 years ago now at this point, David, and talking about the county's preparing for something being on this property down the road in the future. It's one of the most sought after pieces of real estate, not only in Georgia, but really in the Southeast. So the county has known that something would eventually come here to this property. So a lot of infrastructure, especially on our roads, have been developed. Talk about that. Talk about what's been happening around us from 400, Ronald Reagan, McGinnis Ferry, 3 big projects there.
Yeah, so Russell, great segue. Ronald Reagan, a north-south corridor that parallels State Route 400 from right here just to the south. That corridor goes all the way to Baldridge Marina Road, several miles north of us. We've just opened that road up. McGinnis Ferry Road is really one of the last sections of that east-west corridor from State Route 400 to 85 over in Gwinnett County. The last 2-lane section of that bottleneck, if you will, is in the works right now. Phase 2 is actually going out to bid today, Russell, for that phase 1. Phase 2 would be the section that comes this way. We're working with our state partners at additional funding to get that second phase. I think what is probably the largest transportation project that affects this site, not only this site but the region, is the express lanes. And what do we mean by those express lanes? Georgia Department of Transportation is going to have two lanes of express lanes that terminate just over my right shoulder right here into the front door of this site. The forethought of the state to terminate those express lanes here goes back to just what you said. If not this particular development, it's going to be a large-scale mixed-use style development, and so we've got those express lanes that terminate there. McGinnis Ferry Interchange will be wrapping up over the next year. The east-west corridor of McGinnis Ferry, and then the north-south corridor of Ronald Reagan. Why are all those important? Because when events happen at this arena, as it directly relates to this development that's being proposed here, when events happen, that gives multi-points for people to exit this facility. For those that don't stay here downtown, if you've been to the Battery, when a baseball game's over, Braves game's over, you walk through the Battery, a lot of folks stay at the Battery and hang out there. So, but I feel like we're in a good place. We're in a very good place from our water and sewer infrastructure. There'll be some improvements that'll be needed, but those will be 100% the developer's responsibility, just as it would be with any other development.
Yeah, so public safety, transportation, the Greenway also going to have some connectivity here as well. So a lot going into this development. And you talked about it there, partnerships with the developer for this project, partnerships with the state of Georgia, the Atlanta Regional Commission, working with partners in Cobb County to figure out what went wrong and what went right when they were developing
what went good, what went bad.
So a lot of planning has gone into this project, and one thing that I think the county officials can agree upon is that a lot of planning has gone into this project as we get ready for the future and what could happen here. David, let's go back to the bond here for just a moment here. What are some of the alternatives for paying back that bond that were, one, maybe vetted out early on in this process, and two, should that TAD not pass? Because again, this is up to voters in November. What would some of the alternatives be?
Yeah, so the bond, there's really 2 different pathways for repayment of the bond. The first, the cleanest, the most straightforward, is the approval of a redevelopment powers in the form of a TAD that is on the ballot this November. That's number one. The second pathway would essentially be a pilot type of repayment method, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. That's a bit more complicated. There is some title to the property that would be shifted to the development authority. There would be contract style payments that would go straight to the county. The property would be assessed, taxes would be assessed by the tax assessor and the tax commissioner, just as you would any other property. However, the title of that property is really what is the change in the two different scenarios. Either way, the bonding ability is viable. That's number one. And the repayment is viable based on the economic impact analysis that's been provided.
Okay, so a lot to take in there. And if you want to get more information about the tax allocation district, redevelopment powers, what exactly does that mean? Information is available online. We hope you'll go there and get some information at our website, forsythco.com. You can visit forsythco.com/redevelopment-powers. Again, forsythco.com/redevelopment-powers. David, there's still a lot to uncover here as we move forward. We'll look forward to talking to you again in the future as this project hopefully continues. Again, though, for that November 5th election, there will be a ballot item for voters to pay attention to regarding redevelopment powers. Again, you get more information online at forsythco.com. So to recap, the project hinges upon the NHL. The bond that the county has of $225 million does require an NHL franchise to be awarded to the gathering at South Forsyth. That's one of the myths that's out there is this thing happening, yes or no? We still don't know. It all hinges upon the NHL for that franchise. And the second is, during the November 5th election, the vote is for redevelopment powers, tax allocation district, how that bond will be repaid. It's not for the development as a whole. It is instead for how that bond would be repaid. Again, get more information at forsythco.com. We'll have a lot more details coming up in the weeks and months ahead. David, I know it's hot out here. We appreciate you taking the time for us today. We look forward to seeing much more development here. And again, what we're looking at behind us, by the way, should the arena happen, that's center ice, right?
We're real close. Yep, right there where we see the hammer is real close to center ice in the arena. Russell, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. And again, I hope the next time we're standing out here talking, we have the gathering team and we're talking about what Mr. Krause and his team are going to name the hockey team.
All right, exciting things happening here in Forsyth County. Be sure to get more information online at forsythco.com. Follow us on social media. And as always, catch us at TV Forsyth, AT&T Channel 99, Comcast Channel 23. So long for now. Thanks for watching.